economic disparity in America? America was founded on the dream that anyone can make it to the top, but is that the reality? How unequal is it?
Moving on up to the side, to the deluxe apartments in the sky. Moving on up to the side, we finally got a piece of the pie.
7%, that is. According to this graph, only 7% of our income belongs to the bottom 99%. Land of the free, home of the poor. Between 1979 and 2007, the wealthiest Americans had incomes that went up 130%, while the poorest had incomes that went down 30%. This graph shows America's distribution of wealth in 2007. The top 1% held 43% of the population's wealth, while the bottom 80% held 7%. In a perfect world, each percentage of owners would have 20% of the population's wealth. In Sweden, it is somewhat normally distributed, but it is slightly skewed to the right. However, in America, it is greatly skewed to the right, where the bottom 40% don't register on the graph at all. So why is this? Conservative Bill O'Reilly has a lot to say about this.
Romney says he'll keep this welfare safety net in place. The mistake the governor is making is not dealing with the true causes of poverty, thereby showing real concern for the impoverished. That's what all politicians should do. And the causes are these: poor education, addiction, irresponsible behavior, and laziness. That's right, far-left people. Some folks are lazy.
He believes this, even though thousands of people attend job fairs in hopes of getting hired for one of the 550 available jobs. As unemployment rises, the gap between the rich and the poor increases, and the middle class is getting smaller. Economists think the nation's financial recovery has a long way to go. Middle class share of income has greatly decreased, while the top percentage of Americans' income increases. They own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The average CEO pay is 185 times bigger than their workers' pay. Wall Street profits have gone up by 720%, while unemployment has risen by 102%. How is this possible? Middle class and thinking fast. The percent of households with annual incomes within 50% of the median has decreased almost 20% in 30 years. By 2020, it will be under 40%. Do Americans realize this?
I might say this one.
You think the United States is completely equal? 20%, 20%?
It's not exactly equal, but that might be my guess that that'd be the closest. Or maybe this one. It's one of the top two.
And you?
Maybe the middle.
What? United States would be the middle?
I think the middle is U.S.
Middle one is U.S. Middle one is U.S. Middle one is U.S. Which one would you think the U.S. was?
Hopefully that.
This would have to be third world. This would have to be places like India.
A place that would be incredibly unequal, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. The U.S. would be here.
U.S. would be here, and this one?
I don't think that exists.
At least he got that one right. The completely equal pie economy is completely made up. The middle pie represents the wealth distribution of Sweden. The bottom pie? We asked two presumably low-income workers near the tourist line for Letterman.
What place would have a distribution like this? What
United
would
States.
you
mean
what?
In the United States.
United States.
Yes.
Yes, this chart represents the land of opportunity, ours.
The gap got extensively better between 1960 and 2000, but has in the last decade gotten worse than it has ever been. During the Reagan administration, the income gap was not as large. The bottom 90% had 25% of the nation's wealth, and the top 1% have 40% of the nation's wealth. Reagan created a policy that reduced the growth of government spending, federal income tax, government regulation, and controlled the money supply in order to reduce inflation. The unemployment rate dropped from 7.5 to 5.4% during his administration. The United States is currently ranked number 11 in economic inequality amongst the countries in the Americas. How is it that countries like Chile and Uruguay have less of a gap? How is it that places like Brazil, who was once the most unequal country, has been seeing faster droppings in their nation's economic inequality than any other country? How did Brazil do this? Well, Brazil, as well as many other countries like Mexico, have adopted social programs to help out the poor. The idea of the program is to give regular payments to poor families. One of the purposes of the program is to give money to the poor, which in fact doubles the income of the family. The second purpose is to give children better education and health, which will be useful in the long run. Today, malnutrition, anemia, and childhood and adult illnesses have dropped in these countries. Children that are part of the program repeat fewer grades and stay in school longer.
Let's also make sure that a high school diploma
puts our kids on a path to a good job. Right now, countries like Germany focus on graduating their high school students with the equivalent of a technical degree from one of our community colleges. So those German kids, they're ready for a job when they graduate high school. They've been trained for the jobs that are there.
So what about America?